Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of two-tier justice, and we're using the United Kingdom as I guess the baseline for this essay, but it's happening all over the Western world. Wherever the globalists have got their dirty, filthy, clammy hands into the system, then you will see two-tier justice. It's how it is, and you could add to that any government that's being imposed or is in existence that's primarily ideological rather than practical and serving the people. Any ideological government will go down the same path. You see this, you saw it in Cambodia with Pol Pot, in China even today, particularly so with Chairman Mao, in the Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, and the Soviet. So the tendency, as Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the Russian novelist and storyteller, has said, is that you see wherever the government is ideological, you'll see that they tend to go soft on the real criminals, but they'll be brutal and crack down on people they see as having the wrong political views. Similarly, the people who have the political views that are approved of are treated far more leniently by the law. So let's have a look at this. And it's just to do with a Labor Party, for the US. Anyone listening from the US, that's the equivalent of the Democrats, but a Labor Party guy in Britain who's got a black heritage. I mean, he's very swarthy. That's his picture in the thumbnail to this video, and he made an extremely intemperate speech where this is not a direct quote, I'm paraphrasing, where he said that they should slit the throats of people who oppose mass migration. So if you oppose mass migration, you are far right. You are fucking Hitler. And therefore, your throat, in his cognizance at least, Mr. Jones' cognizance, your throat should be cut. And he encouraged, as I perceive it at least, he encouraged that his supporters and people listening who cheered along to his speech, by the way, they should go around slitting throats. Now he's caught on film, on camera. He's dead to rights. So the authorities were rather slow. I thought rather slow to take any action on this. Now, if you oppose mass migration, or you make a tweet, or make a social media post opposing mass migration, the authorities in Britain and often elsewhere around the Western world are very harsh in treating you. You are Hitler, that's it, and you're going to go to damn prison. And there's all sorts of tricks and treachery and deceit used in getting people into prison, and the law and due legal process, the rules of evidence, all this sort of stuff are very happily and quickly bypassed, because why wouldn't you? You're stopping Hitler. I mean, you're allowed to break any law in pursuit of stopping Hitler, aren't you? And if you don't break any law in pursuit of stopping Hitler, that means you are Hitler. And that's the rationale that these insane ideological lunatics have. And they apply it widely, again, all over the Western world. And it's handy as well for the globalists, because it shuts down all opposition to mass migration. And mass migration is absolute centerpiece of the globalist project. Which is why the globalists have aggressively inserted activists all over the legal infrastructure of the Western world. Now, I just want to get into the weeds of this a little bit, and just to sort of have some comment on my own credentials. I've been into court a number of times to watch ideological cases and how they the application of ideological law. And I want to make something absolutely 100% clear. There are two types of law, not the two-tier justice, although you could call it that, but it's ideological law. So ideological law and factual evidence-based law. So those are the two systems we have at the moment. Now, ideological law looks at things like, well, what's the social power of the litigants here? Mass migration is a third world illiterate peasants is a universal good. From an ideological perspective, it is, of course, but it's universal good. Therefore, people that support it are good. People who oppose it are Hitler. So that's it. So this is ideological law and fact, evidence-based law. Now, in areas where ideology doesn't really, illegal practice where ideology isn't really an issue, like say, strictly contract law, that sort of thing, then the courts and the lawyers and people involved tend to pretty much stick to the evidence and the facts. So you tend to, the legal case tends to just follow the evidence, and there's again, you'd struggle to find ideology creeping into that. But wherever you see gender and race issues, or ideology, political ideology, wherever you see those issues, then invariably the courts now are ideological, and you will rarely find a court that is not ideological when it comes to those matters. So there's been if you like, a bifurcation of the legal system, where ideology, it doesn't matter, there's no race, gender issue type stuff. Then facts are still, but where race, gender, trans, those sorts of things, that ideology does play a role. Now, a significant role. Ideology has squeezed out facts and evidence. Now, they'll still use facts and evidence if it suits the ideological narrative they're running. But if it doesn't, they'll just ignore the facts and evidence and come up with an ideological outcome. Now, I've argued cases on contract law and prepared documents and briefed lawyers in court and this sort of thing. So I've got some. And sat in the, and watched the case, given evidence and the like. So I've got some sort of front row seat knowledge of these things, and it's from that standpoint that I'm going to particularly comment. Now, how did this guy get this guy in England who said slit the throats? How could a jury possibly acquit him? How is it possible to acquit somebody? And the evidence is damning. He's not even disputing the evidence. He said, well, okay, I said that. Okay, well, then that's it, buddy. You're going down. But that's not how it works. Now, I don't know how vigorously the prosecutors pursued the case. I don't think they pursued it with anything like the vigor they would if the person was opposed to mass migration. So I would argue there was a soft prosecution. The prosecutors didn't really want to prosecute him. And I've seen cases like that, by the way, and I'll come back to that. The next thing is the judge, in my view, would have been selected on the basis that they were particularly sympathetic to this guy's position. He's only fighting back against the people who oppose mass migration. Anyone who opposes mass migration is Hitler. Therefore, he's opposing Hitler. Therefore, he's a good guy. So it's that sort of process of rationale that the ideologues use. So the judge would have been sympathetic. Now, I don't know how the jury was selected, given that Mr. Jones, the slit the throat guy, was very swarthy and black. Then I would argue that the jury was selected purely on the basis that they would act tribally and sympathetically to his position and attitudes towards. But let's just have a look at the evidence here. So, I haven't seen a transcript, so I'm speculating now. But how could somebody caught dead to rights, inciting violence, being cheered on by a crowd? Yes, slit the throat. Yeah. If that's not an incitement to violence, I don't know what is. So he's caught dead to rights, and he's not disputing he made that claim. So the only defense he's got, well, I had good reason to make that statement, or I didn't really mean it, or I was only a figure of speech. The avenues of escape here are very limited for him. So let's have a look at his lawyers, and we're speculating now is what was said. So, Mr. Jones, you were surrounded by Hitler. There are a million Hitlers waving swastikas, screaming Sieg Heil, with blood dripping from their hands. But you fought back, Mr. Jones. You stood up to Hitler. You stopped Hitler. You told Hitler where to go. What a brave, courageous man you are, Mr. Jones, fighting and standing up to Hitler like that. So that's how it could have been presented. So the jury was, oh, yeah. Oh, fighting Hitler. Oh, yeah, should you? Maybe let's show a few movies to the court. The Holocaust, this sort of thing. And that's, Hitler making speeches. Mr. Jones, you were fighting back against that. Oh, you're so courageous, Mr. Jones, a man of courage. So they could have presented it along those lines. And so Mr. Jones, you were surrounded by far far-right Hitlers, swastika-waving Hitlers every day. But you fought back, Mr. Jones. So the jury, yeah, we got to let this guy off. We got to declare him not guilty because he was fighting Hitler. So this would have been the general, I would argue, the general sentiment that was presented. It's impossible to find somebody not guilty on this basis unless you go, well, I agree with that. You know, it's okay to murder a few thousand people if you're stopping Hitler. And this was so the matter was presented ideologically. Now, staying with the ideology at the moment. So Mr. Jones is obviously of a migrant background, and so these migrants that are fleeing persecution, little babies fleeing persecution by Hitler, and you, Mr. Jones, are championing. You're standing up for little babies. Oh fuck! This guy's fucking Superman. We got to acquit him. And so I would imagine the jury was selected very much for their sympathy for mass migration and the globalization sort of, edifice generally. And this is how they were able to acquit him. Now, it could be, well, you didn't really mean it, did you, Mr. Jones? Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're a good guy. You're fighting Hitler, and you didn't really mean it. It was just a figure of speech, you regret saying what you said, didn't you? Yes, I regret that. Well, there you go. What's the problem? Just acquit the guy and be done with it. Let's suppose it's a white person calling for the end to mass migration or something like that. So I understand that Hitler is your best friend. Are you denying? Oh, what do you mean? Hitler died 80 years ago. That's no excuse, you far-right fucking thug. You Hitler-waving, swastika-waving Nazi. Yeah, a very different sort of approach to presenting evidence, and also talking about the character of the people. But somehow an ordinary, a woman, a wife of a centre-right party, politician who made an intemperate online post, she gets years in prison, whereas this guy who caught absolutely dead to rights and actually physically inciting a crowd gets let off, not even a fine or anything. Who paid the guy's legal fees? Where did that money come from? Very different treatment of the two people. Now, in the case of the white woman, and if she wasn't white, I don't think the government would have gone after her. But the white woman, she pleaded guilty, and I would argue there was as much deceit to encourage her to do that as there was an effort to encourage the black pro-globalist guy, the throat slit guy, encourage him to take it to court and take it to a jury. He was assured, I would argue, he was assured by all of the authorities, all the string pullers, all the backroom goons that no, don't plead guilty, don't plead. We'll take it to court. We will make sure you're acquitted. We'll make sure you walk out the court. We'll do whatever we have to do, but we'll make sure of that. We don't have the precedent of people like you being found guilty of this sort of thing, because then we're painting them as the Nazis, so we can't have you guilty. So ideologically, they just couldn't allow this guy to be declared guilty, and did everything that was necessary to make sure that he wasn't. Whereas the white woman, now I don't know why she agreed to plead guilty. Well, I do actually. I've seen these things in action. Look, I think what's the woman's name? Lucy, I think it was. Look at this. No one's going to come to your. There's no NGOs that are going to pay your legal fees. Not like the black guy where all his legal costs are covered. You're going to have to pay it out of your own pocket. This case could go on for years. It could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe $1 million. Lucy, do you have that sort of money? No, I don't. Oh no, we'd have to sell the house. We'd be on the street. Well, That's a possibility, Lucy, but it will be very, very expensive. Do you want to be bankrupted, Lucy? Do you want to? Do you want that? And you still might lose. So you'll be bankrupted, unemployable for the rest of your life. Is that what you? Is that what you want for your children, Lucy? Your little children. Can you imagine your little children crying with hunger on the street? Lucy, can you imagine this? Is that what you want, Lucy? Do you want that? Well, maybe. Now, Lucy, if you want to plead guilty, I think we can maybe get away with, because you did do it. I mean, you did say the sort of things that Hitler would say, didn't you? Oh, well, I didn't mean it like that. Well, it doesn't matter whether you meant it or not. By the way, do you own any swastikas? No, okay. So Lucy, do you want to? I think we can maybe just get a few weeks and maybe a fine, bit of probation, something like that. I think we can maybe look towards that. So if you plead guilty, the judge will be very, very happy with you if you plead guilty, because you're not costing the state any money, and the legal case and so on. So the judge will be very happy and probably just let you off with a bit of a slap and a finger wag and so. So, but it's up to you, Lucy, what you do. I don't. But if you do decide to take it to court, then I'll have to ask that you make a down payment of $50,000. But I don't have 50,000. Well, maybe I have to borrow it, Lucy. It's up to you, though. I'm not telling you what to do, Lucy. All right then. I'll plead guilty. Yeah, okay, all right then. Lucy gets 3 years, whatever it is, in prison. Oh, I don't have Lucy. The judge was really tough. Really tough. They heard the stories about all the swastikas and all the Hitler screaming Sieg Heil. So they had to make an example of you, Lucy. Look, I'm sorry, but the far right has to be taught a lesson there. So it would have gone. This is how the contrast. Whereas, with Mr. Jones, we've got an NGO to pay your legal fees. No, that costs are covered. Don't worry. No, you won't be out of pocket for anything. Don't worry about that. Don't worry. We'll just take it to court, and I can guarantee you that you're going to be acquitted, and you'll walk out there. You sure? But yeah. So those are the different. This is what by two-tier justice. Justice decided in the back room. Predetermined justice by selecting the judges, stacking the juries, making sure the prosecution is very vigorous in pursuing one matter, but very sort of slow in pursuing another. I've seen ideological cases, say, in the divorce courts, where a father had supposedly kidnapped the children and said that the mother was dead and all this sort of thing. Now he was found and given several years in prison for that. And a penalty should have applied. The woman wasn't dead, incidentally. But what about when the woman does exactly the same thing? Kidnaps the children and says the father's dead. What about that? What penalty? She would get the same penalty, wouldn't she? Well, no, she doesn't. She gets no penalty. She gets told off, naughty, don't do it again. But there is no penalty. And there are ideologies. You can't separate a mother from the children, so we just have to let this one go. Why? Why do you put him in prison but not her? It's social power, and this is so within the ideology thing. Social power, plays a role. Now the throat slit guy, not only was he black and so on, and from the side of politics that very much supports the globalist position, mass migration and so on. So he's dark brown. He's sort of lower social power himself. This sort of stuff. He's fighting back against straight white people who oppose mass migration, and they're opposing the mass migration of third world peasants. And they've got low social power. The white people have social power. So there's that social power calculus plays into these things very heavily. And just as outside looking in, we don't quite appreciate the extent to which that influences legal outcomes in ideological law. And again, ideological law, just as a rule of thumb, wherever you see race, gender, or trans issues, then ideological law will apply. Wherever those things are not in evidence, then fact evidence law will most likely at least apply. Now, there are other cases in the divorce court. So here's a a woman whose husband decided to become gay, and so she beat him up in public in front of a number of people. And so when this came out in the divorce court, the judge told her she was naughty and bad and gave her a finger wagging, but that was it. Now, in the reverse, where a woman decides to become a lesbian and saying, I'm going to take everything, I'm going to ruin you, and that sort of thing. He gives her an open hand slap. That's it. You're never going to see your kids again. So absolute, like a ton of bricks, the law came down on that guy because he's a straight white male. So again, ideology played in. The rationale, if you pick apart the judge's reasons for judgment, you pick it apart, is that, well, he's a straight white male. He has social power, whereas the white lesbian, has much less social power. So if the higher social power assaults the lower social power, then it's a mega crime. It's a crime of the century and a mega crime. But in the case of the straight white woman assaulting the gay white guy, then the court deems, well, they kind of got equal social power. So really, even though she assaulted him, it's not really a crime because the social power structure was not trespassed upon. So this is really the difference that we're looking at here, that the social power thing. So mass migrants from the third world have low social power. Thus, if you oppose them coming to the West, then you're Hitler. If you support them coming to the West, then you're a virtuous person covered in angel dust. So this is the things to think about. Now, we've allowed this to happen. If you look at the judgments that activist judges, make against President Trump's policies and so on, you'll notice that in all of them, social power plays a very big role in the decision making or in the verdict that they're delivering. If you take out the social power calculus, then you see that it's a judgment that has no merit in any way whatsoever, nor does it with the social power calculus, by the way. But it's that calculus that's allowed to be used. And I would argue that the Supreme Court in the United States and every high court in every Western country needs to act on this, that when the social power calculus is the primary or sole determinant of a legal outcome rather than the factual evidence, then that determination must be declared null and void, as indeed it should be in the case of this throat slit guy. You've been a Tasteless today, your Pushback Challenge. Thank you for listening.